Hey gamers, this is Liz Davidson from Beyond Solitaire, and today I want to show you how to solo donning the purple from Tompet Games. In this game, we are going to be the Roman Emperor trying to survive at a really rough time in the Empire. So here we are, ready to play Donning the Purple. In this game, in a multiplayer game, we would be swapping roles with a senator and the Emperor's heir. But in this game, we're just going to be the Emperor. Our goal is to survive all the way to the end of 4 years, while also dealing with assassination attempts and attempts to get victory points from the Senate. So we both have to survive the 4 years and have more victory points than the Senate in order to win. If we finish the game and they have more victory points or the same that we have, then we still lose. Alright, so here we are all set up for a game of Donning the Purple. I've got the initial board set up ready to go. So I put the forum cards, the event cards, and the plot cards off to the side, and you will very soon figure out what those are. The one thing that you need to do if you're just playing a normal game is that each of the cards is going to have, you have to pull out the ones with little symbols that have a 1 with a line through it because they are not for the solo game. And if you don't want to play with the advanced rules, then you also need to make sure you catch all the cards that have a little A in the bottom left corner. So I've sifted all of those out, and then these are the cards that are left that I've piled up. I've also put out some of our beginning tokens. So here we have our green price. Because it's the solo game, the green price is never going to be 1. So we're going to start it here at 2 and hope for the best. Happiness of the people, which we're going to have to maintain if we want to get victory points and, live, starts at 5. And here's the year tracker because this is a 4-year game, so we're going to do this turn cycle 4 times if we play a full game. The next thing that I've done is I have put 2 little legionary shields in each of the 4 capitals of the regions that aren't the one that contains Rome. So you basically need to protect your capitals with legions, and you get some starter ones to begin with. You will also notice that there are some places that are only capitals, some capitals such as in Egypt or Egyptus. You also produce grain here, but other regions produce grain in different spots that are not their capitals. So we're going to have to pay attention when we seed enemies on the board to where they are, because it's going to affect the kind of grain that we can collect. We also automatically get an estate in Rome, and since we're the Emperor, that's where our pawn is going to start out as well. I'll move the player boards to give you a little bit of a better view. So here is just the main player board. We have 10 stamina here. Once we run out of stamina, we will die, which means that we need to have an heir selected, which is a separate action, which I'll show you in a moment, in order to basically take the place of our heir and then continue ruling as our descendant or our selected replacement. You can also put out buildings, so estates, when you build them, allow you to gain money. Monuments, when you build them, give you bonuses. I can get increased strength, I can have a better odds in a die roll, and I can get victory points. The other actions on a main player board are moving our pawn. So if we want to move with the legions or on our own to take out some enemies, we can move and use our strength to destroy enemies of Rome. I can bribe senators, which means I can put my own little pet senators down here in the Senate, which is a useful thing to do. I can assassinate senators, which means I can take out senators that are on my side. And then if I were playing the normal game, I might want to assassinate the Emperor when somebody else was beating them, but I don't necessarily want to assassinate myself, so that one's not going to be too useful in this game. You can also see that there's a hand limit of 3. Over here it says actions max 2, but in the solo game that is not the case. We will get a maximum of 5 actions per turn. We're also going to get to play with the special Emperor board. So what that's going to mean for us is that we have a few extra actions that we can take on every turn. In the multiplayer game, whoever's Emperor gets this board and shifts around, but we're going to keep it the whole time. So we are going to have the options to choose an heir, which we're going to have to time correctly or else. We can move legions and we can train legions, which means that we can pay to put more legions on the board. We're also going to have the option of building aqueducts, and what that's going to mean is that we can make the people happier, and we can remove famine tokens from the board or prevent them from being put down. So the aqueduct is a very key building in the game. Here's where we're going to keep our grain. When we collect grain, we're going to be trying to get as much as we can, because the people become happier if you feed all of the Roman provinces. You lose happiness for every province that you don't feed that does not have an enemy on it. Yeah, provinces that are currently occupied by enemies don't count towards the provinces that you have to feed, but every single province in here that does not have an enemy on it wants food from you. And you're never going to get enough to just feed them off of what the empire produces on its own. You're always going to have to import. So watching the import price and controlling you have to spend is a pretty key part of the game. We're also starting with 20 coins. We have our 10 stamina, and we get to draw 1 plot card. So the plot cards are just little cards that help us in the game. So let's see what our first one's going to be. So here we have receive 5 coins or remove 3 from the grain storage. So as you can see, this card has some use in the multiplayer game that is not going to work for us in solo. We'll just be gaining 5 coins. There's no reason for us to take grain out of the grain storage, but if you're playing against someone else, you might play it to kind of screw the Emperor over a little bit, which is darkly hilarious. And over here you have a strength. We can use this strength either at the end of the year against the senators who try to assassinate us, or when we go into combat, we can use this to increase our strength to take out some enemies. So plot cards can be either played for their action or played for the number in the bottom right corner. I've also pulled a hidden agenda card. This one is telling me that I'm going to get an extra 2 victory points at the end of the game if I build all of my monuments. And I can get 1 if I have at least 2 senators in the Senate. So that's actually kind of a neat card because it's something that I'd be interested in anyway. But I also do have to make sure to build a monument because I get minus victory points if I don't manage to do it by the end. So now we are ready to play. The game takes place in 8 phases that are detailed over here on the right side of the board. In the solo mode of the game, one of the special extra actions that we take is that before we place enemies, we place internal enemies, also known as senators. So at the beginning of every year, you're going to place 2 senators in the Senate. The Senate gains VP based on how many red senators there are in the Senate, and that's who you're competing against. So this round, unless I murder one of them, the Senate is going to get 2 victory points. Then the next turn they'll get 4. Then the next turn they'll get 6. So you can see how this can get out of control very quickly. The other thing that matters at the end of the game is that the rightmost senator is going to trigger an extra victory point at the end. It says 2, but in the solo game it's only 1. So now that I've done the very first thing and placed 2 senators, I'm going to roll a d6 and see where our enemies are going to go. All right, so they're coming to 4. I don't necessarily like that very much, but we're just gonna have to deal with it. So when you roll, this is the number that's gonna match the province in each region on the map. So we're gonna put 2 enemies in each of the 4 spots on here. So that's not always great. So here we got a couple enemies blocking Gallia, which is unfortunate because we have green here. We're gonna have some enemies coming to the province that's right next to Egypt. So this is our breadbasket. We cannot have enemies take over this capital because it's gonna be the most damaging. All the other grain areas produce 3 grain, but Egypt produced 6. So no, we can't. We have to do something about these guys pretty quickly. We're gonna put a couple dudes in Cappadocia. No enemies ever enter Rome, but if you get all of the enemy pieces out on the board, or if they take over all of the capitals, you still lose. And then we have some people over here in Dalmatia. So once you put the enemies on the board, that's not the end of the enemy turn. They're going to move. So every enemy is going to move 1 numerical region or province closer to the capital of the region. So each enemy is going to move 1 numerical space, 1 province higher or lower towards the capital of the region. So the way that battle works in this game is we never roll a die or anything like that. It's strictly about numbers. So right now, these enemies are moving closer to Hispania, so they're coming to Aquitania. These enemies are going to move 1 closer to the capital, which is number 6. So they're going to move to Macedonia as they approach Thracia. The Cappadocian enemies are actually going to go down because Pontus is number 1. And then here in Egypt, we're going to be safe because these guys can't actually move in right now because the strength of the Roman army is equal to their strength. If there were 3 enemies here, we would lose both of our legions and the capital. So the way that battle works is you can play a plot card to increase your strength if it's your pawn. But this is basically a deterministic combat where if you move into a space where you're the more powerful force, then you automatically win and clear that force out. If you are trying to move into a space where the force of the other side is equal, you just can't. So you know exactly what you need to do to be able to take over another space on the board. There are some other little touches to moving enemies. If you move one into a province where you've built something, then you do lose your building. So you have to protect, especially the areas where you have built. And then if an enemy comes into a capital, they stay there until you go kill them. However, if you do kill the enemies in a capital, you get a VP, so that's pretty good. The other thing that enemies don't do is like they all just stay in the region they're in. So these guys are in this blue region. They're not going to ever leave it. So the enemies don't team up from region to region, but you have to control them within specific regions. So the next step in the game is to harvest grain. We have to feed our people after all. So what we're going to do is we're first going to roll a d4 die to figure out the region number where we're going to have our famine. So the first thing that you're always going to say is not number 4, because that is where Egypt is. And if you lose the grain down here, then it's like the biggest loss possible. In this case, I have just rolled a 2. So we are going to have a famine here in region 2, which is also unfortunate. So what's going to happen is that we are going to take a famine marker and we are going to place it here in region 2 to symbolize that there's a famine. And now we're going to collect grain. So the first thing that we want to do is check to make sure that the enemy soldiers are not in any place that produces grain. So this is good, this is good, this is good. And Egypt is okay for now. So that's good. So basically what's going to happen is that you get 3 grain from most regions that produce. You get nothing from a region with a famine. You also, for the record, do not collect grain if there is an enemy on that farm space. So the enemy presence on the board can also limit your food supply. And you also don't produce grain in regions that have a famine. So basically this region 2 is going to be out of it. Dacia has not given us anything. But we are going to get 6 grain from Egypt. We're going to get 3 grain from Armenia over here. We're going to get 3 grain from Gallia. And we are going to get 3 grain from Rome for a total of 15 grain. So we get to take 15 grain. So basically on the space down here, I can put 1 in the 10 and then a 5 to show that we have 15. And hopefully we're going to hang on to it through the event cards because we need it to help feed our people at the end of the round. So it is still not our turn. We are now going to have to draw 5 event cards and then we get a turn. So one thing about this game is it can take a minute before you get to do anything. So the board state just gradually worsens and gets crazier and you have to just kind of sit through it for a little bit. So we're going to draw 5 event cards. And we are going to have to do whatever they say and then see where we're at the end before we take our actions. So here's event card number 1. Famine. So it says roll a die and place a famine in that region. If there is an aqueduct in that region, place no famine. So one thing that is interesting is that famines can pile up. So if you have a pile of 2, then the region can stay depressed. So I'm kind of hoping, I don't want to roll a 4, but I also kind of don't want to roll a 2. So let's see what we get. All right, we rolled a 3. So let's put another famine marker out in region 3. Fortunately, we already collected grain for this round, but in the future, stuff like that can really affect you. Our second event is going to be, all right, so this one is the heir dies. So basically, this says if no player is the heir, you shuffle it back in. But basically what this means is that it is expensive for me to get an heir, but I need an heir because I'm not going to survive the whole game on my own stamina. I'm going to need to replace myself at least once. So when the heir dies, that means that I've basically lost a bunch of money and that I wasted some of my stamina for nothing to get an heir. So I have to be careful about when I time getting an heir to avoid having one and hoping that this card doesn't come up because that stinks. In this case, however, I just shuffle it back in and then we get a different event card. So we're still going to have to draw 4 more cards. Next card. All right, this is really technically still card number 2. All right, we got hordes of enemies. So we're going to roll the d4 to decide the target region, and we're going to place 1 enemy in each province in that region. Just not region 4, dear God. Okay, let's see what we get. 2. All right, so a bunch of enemies are coming to region 2. So we're going to put 1, 2, 3, 4 enemies out, and then we're going to put more in here. So basically, if I don't do something about this, we're going to lose the capital this time. Because if the enemies can both move from 2 directions to take over a capital, they will. They'll ignore that sort of numeric value moving pattern. So that was awesome. Next event, event number 3. The Roman people are unhappy. Move the happiness track 2 spaces to the left. The Roman people are ungrateful. Let's just give that card its true title. Whew. So just so you know, I die if I get down to no happiness, so I'm going to have to kiss up to these people this next round. All right, event card number 4. Grain shortage, great. So now I lose 3 grain from the grain shortage. That is brutal. So we're just going to put this off to the side and take 3 grain away. So I had 15, now I have 12. So that means that there's a lot of people I'm going to have to feed with not enough food. And now there's one more event card. All right, earthquake. Fun. Okay, so now I'm going to roll the d4 to decide the target region. In the target region, I need to remove all buildings and add a famine token and remove 1 unit from each province. Players with a pawn in the target region lose stamina. So fortunately, the target region is never going to be Italy, so I'm cool for now. But we are going to be removing 1 unit from each province. Okay, this is interesting. So if I roll region 2, that's actually kind of awesome because it'll cut my enemies down even though I'll still lose a legion. It's less nice in other areas. And of course, we're also going to get a famine, which is horrible. So let's see what we get. All right, we got region 3 again. Okay, so what that means is that we are going to come to region 3 and we're going to take each of these units. So we're going to lose 1 enemy and we're going to lose 1 legionary unit. So they had some equal problems, and then we're going to stack up some famine over here. We've got to do something about the famine issues in this area because it's going to continue to just sort of be depressed throughout the game if we don't do something. All right, so that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 event cards. So now it's my turn to do something, and I get up to 5 actions this turn. Of course, I have to be careful about how much stamina I use because the other thing is there are other things that could cost you stamina. So as the Emperor, I lose stamina if the Senate tries to assassinate me and I don't overcome it completely. I can lose stamina from event cards. I can lose stamina from any number of things. So I have to decide how I want to deploy these actions because I don't want to misuse a limited resource. So now that we've drawn all of the event cards, we do get to draw a card that's potentially fun, which would be a forum card. So forum cards are cards that are basically like an extra permanent action that you can add to the board. If you put your stamina there, however, you never get it back. So stamina that I use on normal stuff, I will get back either when I can recover some stamina, which is a little bit more rare, or when when my heir takes over, the heir will get all that stamina. A forum card is basically giving up stamina for the entirety of the game. So let's see what we got. Oh, great. I don't really like this one. So spend a stamina to move the price of grain 1 space up or down. Like, I mean, it's important to move the grain, but dang, like losing a stamina for the next 3 years because I want to move the grain price? Nah. Also, this card isn't that useful right now. And the reason that it's not is that the grain price is right where I want it right now. I can't go any lower than 2. So we'll put it over here, but I'm not expecting to use that particular forum card. So, you know, there are better ones in there. One of my little quibbles about this game actually is that I truly feel that some forum or plot cards are much better than others, and you'll have a different game depending on which ones you draw. All right, so now it's my turn to do stuff. I think we definitely need to do something about our enemies. I think that we may also think about getting a building out. I don't want to make my heir an heir yet, because I'm not ready to die, and I'm also not ready to draw the heir dies as a card. So that can wait until next year. Theoretically. Of course, that's always the risk, isn't it? So I think that we need to go clean up. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move my pawn. My pawn has a strength of 2, and it can move a max of 3 spaces. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm just going to move in and wreck these enemies, because I can go 1, 2, 3, and then I'll just move through to go back home again. So I did 1, 2, 3. So what that did is it cleared all of these enemies off the board because I can just do that. I'm pretty awesome. So the enemies are gone. And I'm also going to get to roll glory dice for having defeated the enemy in this way. So I've defeated 3 enemies. I'm going to go roll 3 glory dice, and that's always awesome. So now I'm going to roll 3 glory dice. What's awesome about this is basically everything that they do is pretty good. Okay, so this wasn't too bad of a roll. I got 5 coins, which is great because money is awesome in this game. And then I also got it to draw a plot card. So let's see what I got. So this plot card is move the grain price one space up or down, and it's also 2 strength. I might not use it yet, and I might not use it for its action, but hey, at least it's a plot card. It's good for something. So I'll put it down here. And that was my first action. I think I want to do some more military stuff because I'm also very concerned about the enemy situation in Egypt. So let's see how I want to do this. I can use 4 more stamina tokens this turn. All right, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and use 1 stamina to train legions down here. So I'm going to train 2. So I'm going to pay 5 coins and get 1 back. I'm going to put 2 more legions down here in Egypt. Then I can move a legion or group of legions. So we're going to move here, take these guys out, and then move back. So that's another 2 enemies removed. And another 2 glory dice. So we got another 2 coins. Not amazing, honestly, but a plot card, which can't hurt. So we're gonna have to discard our hand down, but that's okay. So now I can use this to place a free senator or to remove the rightmost senator from the Senate. It's also worth a lot of strength points. So that's actually pretty potentially useful. Let's think about how we want to use that. So these enemies are off the board. The other good that all this fighting did us is that as you battle, every province you clear out leads to more happiness. So I cleared out 1, 2, 3, 4 provinces so far. So that means that the people of Rome are much happier at the moment than they were before. If you clear out a capital that they're in, then you actually get VP for that. But hopefully it's not going to come to something like that. All right, I've got 2 actions left this turn. And while there's a lot of other stuff I could be doing, I think I want to go militaristic, partially because doing a lot of stuff with your armies earlier in the game gets you money because you get to roll those glory dice. And I'm looking for that because everything's expensive. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and move again. So my strength is 2 and I can move 3 spaces. So I'm going to come 1 to get rid of this guy. The people will be happy. But then I'm going to come over here and see how there's 3 guys here. My strength is only 2. Except that I'm going to play this plot card for its strength, which pulls my strength up to 4 for this battle. So I'm going to discard my plot card in order to increase my strength and be able to come in here and clear these guys out, which brings the people 1 more happiness. Also, I'm going to get to discard these enemies from the board and roll 4 glory dice, which is the max that you can roll in the solo game, even if you destroy more enemies than that. All right, let's see what I roll. Okay. That was a plot. Okay, so the good... No, you were a plot. All right, so this is actually a great roll for me because it's lucrative. So 4, 8, 11 coins, which is fabulous. And then another plot card. So let's see what I pull this time. So now, if I play it, all my estates generate double the amount of money this year. So I only have 1 estate right now, but that's still 10 coins. Worth thinking about. So now I have 1 more action. Let's see how much money I've got hanging out over here. So I have 5, 10, 15, 20. So I'm going to switch that up for 20 so I can see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so I'm rocking 34 money right now, which is good because I'm going to need a lot of it to feed the people of Rome, but I'm also thinking about building something. I think that I should, given that my hidden agenda encourages the building of monuments, or I could try to get an aqueduct out. I need to build something. So I'm going to come over here and let's build an aqueduct because we've been having some famine issues and I want to deal with it. So where exactly I'm going to put that aqueduct, I'm not sure yet, but we're going to have it over here in the projection track. So when you build a building, you don't get to put it out right away. You have to wait for a certain stage of the round for it to come out. So we have planned to build an aqueduct and we'll see where I decide to place it. So the temptations, by the way, in terms of where to place it are going to be here where we're 2 famine deep and we have to deal with that, or try to protect Egypt because that's the best and biggest bit of my grain supply and I just can't have anything happen to it. All right, so the last thing I'm going to do this turn is draw another plot card. That is what you do after you've taken all of your actions. So I currently have 3 plot cards. That'll bring me up to 4. I have a hand limit of 3, but I don't actually have to discard down to it until the end of the year. So we're just going to take it and see what we get. So this plot card is going to be... it's the one that lets me either switch the positions of estates, which is good in the multiplayer game, or put a free estate up on the building track, which I may do at some point because it's pretty nice. It's also got a good strength to it, so I could use it either way. All right, so now we are coming out of player actions and going into the place buildings phase. So the thing that's interesting is that in the solo game, this doesn't matter as much, but in the multiplayer game, you can actually swap which buildings are in the priority order and kind of mess with people and keep their buildings from getting out onto the board. So only the first 4 positions on the production line actually make it. And what that means is that you can manipulate and hurt other people when it comes to delaying when stuff can get built, which is pretty funny. For now, however, we are going to get our aqueduct out there. And I'm just trying to decide if I want to protect Region 4 or if I want to bail out Region 3. I think we're going to take a risk. And we're going to bail out Region 3 because I don't want to have a guaranteed lower amount of help next time. So we've built this aqueduct. We've cleared out 2 famine tokens because that's what happens when you build an aqueduct. It'll tell you down here, remove 2 famine tokens. And then the people's happiness goes up by 3. Also, that aqueduct cost me 5, by the way, in case I didn't pay. So the people's happiness is going up 1, 2, 3, which is great for me because it's going to mean more victory points this turn. But the most important thing to remember is that if I lose that aqueduct to enemies, then I will also have problems with the people's happiness being taken away from me again. So when an aqueduct is destroyed, you also lose points. All right, so my buildings are out. And now I have to distribute food. So what that means is that every province that does not have an enemy in it wants to get fed. There are 25 provinces on the map. There are 2 provinces that have enemies, and what that means is I need to feed 23 provinces. The problem is that I started the turn with 15 grain, and now I'm down to 12. And what that means is that I'm going to have to import the 11 remaining grain that I need in order to feed all of these people. I can choose not to import all of it, but I lose 1 happiness for every one that I don't. And I gain a happiness if I feed everybody. So the current import price for grain is 2. And I have 25, 26, 29 gold or money to deal with. So the question is, do I want to buy the 11 grain that I need to feed everyone for the price of 22 bucks? I'm going to go ahead and do it because right now grain is cheap and there may be times when I want to play faster and looser with the people's happiness. So I have managed to feed everyone and I have emptied out the grain supply and done all of that. All right, so we've done the distribute food phase. Now we're going to collect taxes. So basically each of the provinces generates 1 coin for me. However, if there's a famine in a region, none of those provinces are going to generate any income, which is one of the reasons I cleared out the famine. So what that means is that -6 here, I get 5 coins for my estate, and then I get 1 coin for every province that doesn't have an enemy and that isn't in a state of famine. So what that means is that I'll get 4 money from here. I'll get 6 from here, so we're at 10. And then I'll get another 5 from here for 15, and then another 5 from my estate for a total of 5. So now we're up to 20 coins back in taxes, which is not too bad. So most of the money that I spent on keeping the people happy, I got back in the taxation phase, which is good. So now that we've done all of our taxation, that means that I also have to give the senators their due. Rude. So they are going to get some victory points for as many senators as there are in the Senate. So there are currently 2 red senators in there, and that means that I'm going to give 2 victory points to the Senate. As you can see, there's a risk to letting it pile up because next turn they would get 4, and then the turn after that they would get 6. So they just keep getting more points for existing if I don't assassinate them or deal with them in some other way. So now at the end of the year, one more pretty intense thing is going to happen. And that's going to be the Senate is going to try to assassinate me. So basically what that means is that I might want to play a plot card to fight them off. And, basically we're going to draw a random plot card from the top of the deck. And I can either take it and lose stamina, or I can try to play a plot card to reduce the amount of stamina that I would lose. I want to have a big year next year, so I'm going to go ahead, since I have to have 3 plot cards in my hand at the end of the round anyway, we're going to go ahead and play this one for 3. against whatever the Senate is going to do. So I'm not going to do getting the 5 coins. I'm going to play it for its strength. So I've put up a plot card of 3. The Senate is going to draw 1 for only 2. Ha 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 ha. So their assassination attempt against me this year has failed. And now I'm going to be watching them and contemplating assassination. So now we're in the end of year phase. So there's some things to pay attention to at the end of the year. The first thing is the enemy count. So if all of the regional capitals are under enemy control, then you will lose at this point. Fortunately, that did not happen to us. If all of the enemy tokens are on the map, there's 28 of them, then you'll also lose. This is actually the point where players discard plot cards until they have a maximum of 3. I just handled that. I, the Emperor, am going to get some victory points according to my happiness track. So I'm going to get 4 victory points, which I will take gladly. And then we get to remove 1 famine marker from each region. So this famine's going to clear up, at least for now. So we're back to a more chilled out and peaceful empire. So now we are going to move this counter by 1. And then we basically start the entire process again. So that was only 1 year out of 4, but I decided to stop the playthrough there in the interest of time. I hope this gave you a good overview of how the rounds work and the sorts of things you could do in the game in general. And I very much hope that you enjoyed this how to solo tutorial. If you did, please like and subscribe to my channel. If you really liked it, feel free to buy me a coffee at the link below, and that'd be much appreciated. And either way, I hope I see you again soon. Happy gaming.